Good morning, afternoon, or good night. Thank you so much for joining us to talk a little bit about the future of search and how you can fix your search in 2022. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. Just so you know, this webinar is designed to be interactive. The dock of widgets at the bottom of your screen will allow you to learn about today's speakers and participate in the Q&A session that takes place at the end of this presentation today. The slides will advance automatically throughout the event. You can also download a copy of the slides via the resources widget. Lastly, if you're experiencing any technical problems, please click the help widget, again, found at the bottom of your screen, or type your issue into the Q&A area, and we'll be glad to offer you one-on-one assistance. So let's get started. Here at LucidWorks, we're thrilled about the innovation that's going to disrupt the way we think about and deploy search within our respective organizations. This is the year when we really get our search together. 2 weeks ago, we announced the launch of our new SaaS search platform, and the first application that's going to be powered by that platform, Connected Search. Connected Search is a quick-to-configure site search application that was built with the business user in mind. Not that we don't love empowering our developers, but this tool is going to allow just about everyone in an organization to be able to set up highly relevant website search that's going to transform the end user experience and transform it fast. Before we dig in, let me, of course, introduce my illustrious colleagues that are joining me today. I'm happy to be joined by our Chief Product Officer, Vivek Sriram, and our VP of Sales Engineering, Brian Land. I'm Jenny Gomez, the Director of Product Marketing. And today, of course, we're going to be digging in to we're going to be talking about how LucidWorks is driving the change to make search easy. We built our connected search application so that our customers could deploy search for high-volume public websites fast with little operational burden so that the time to value is achieved virtually in minutes sometimes. So without further ado, I'm going to punt it over to Vivek so that he introduces you to the LucidWorks vision and the reason why we think this is truly the future. Vivek, take it away.
Thank you, Jenny. Really appreciate it. That was a great intro. So, kind of what to echo a couple of the major themes that Jenny was talking about in the first slide that she just shared, is that and I'll talk about why we built this thing in the first place in a minute or two. But there are a few things that are kind of underpinning this whole endeavor for us. The first is that we want to make search easy for people to use. It's time to value, make it of high quality, so improving relevance, and that it's not just for technical people. We want to make it also easy to maintain and operate. So it's kind of asked this rhetorical question here, which is, why does the world need another search engine, right? Search has been around for a long time. But it's been around for a long time, and it remains an unsolved problem as such in many ways because it's kind of hard to solve. It's hard to solve because search is subjective, and that means that there isn't a single user expectation as such. The way to optimize the problem fundamentally depends on who is looking at it and what his or her needs might be. And so there are kind of a few things that are going on here. The first important thing is that user expectations are constantly changing. We're 20 years ago when we might have first thought about search engines, commercial search engines, or maybe even a little longer than that. Everyone was all gaga over 10 blue links, and pretty soon in the subsequent 10 years, you start to even take things like DeepMind, Google's DeepMind beating the world Go champion. They're like, it's just another day. That's a search engine at work. Right, so in a very brief amount of time, 10 or 20 years, the expectations from people just grow radically. So that makes solving search hard. But it's also that there's consumer choice, right? So users of the system itself, whether they're commerce, their employees are looking at stuff, or just average web browsers who are interested in finding information, have lots and lots of different avenues that they can go to find information. So as a provider, as a manufacturer of technology, and as a tool set that perhaps many of you will use in order to build solutions, you have to be very aware of how your users are using things and know that they have lots and lots of other of alternatives. And yet another area, which is maybe a little bit less obvious, but also important, is that search is fundamentally, first and foremost, really good at handling text, but you can also do a bunch of other things with search as well. As Elasticsearch has proved out very, very successfully, that search lends itself very, very nicely to analytics, to all kinds of structured data and things like that. So there are a number of different use cases that search can solve, and that's an interesting aspect of it as well, which kind of makes the solving the problem hard, and why it is that we're embarking on this effort to go and launch connected search. Let's kind of look at this real quick as what are the other alternatives out there, and why is it that we built connected search, and why is it that we think that the market actually needs such a thing. And so, there are a couple of different categories of people who provide search, including, for those of you who are familiar with LucidWorks, our flagship product, Fusion, which has been in market for a number of years, solves hard problems really, really well. We handle some of the hardest search problems for some of the world's biggest companies, and we do it at an extremely large scale. But that also comes at a price. That price can be that the people who are responsible for managing and building it and taking care of it every day might tend to need to be quite sophisticated, both technologically as well as operationally. So some of the more modern search as a service providers out there, cloud first search providers like Elasticsearch or AWS's Elastic, Algolia, et cetera, a number of really great products have made the experience first and foremost incredibly good for operators. So by removing operational burden, it makes the search engine itself easier to use and to deploy and manage. They've been historically less good at making it fun and enjoyable for developers to go build new things, in part because of what I just said a couple minutes ago, which is that search is subjective, and how it's perceived depends on who's asking the question. And they've been traditionally, none of these things out there, we think, have been all that great at dealing with non-technical people. And what we're trying to do with connected search is really look at that as a white space, right? That by focusing on users, focusing on user value, that we can create a really great product here, which can satisfy a whole number of people, which potentially existing alternatives in the market are less good at solving. This isn't to say that they're not good. They're very sophisticated and solve problems really well, but we think that we can be different in a substantial and material way. Right? So when we talk about focus on user value, there are a couple of things going on here that we always have to be focused on relevance, right? So which is why is it that it's useful for people? How is it that it's easy to maintain and manage and use? What's the operating experience look like? And how extensible and customizable and useful is it? And so when we think about these kinds of design constraints, then it starts to inform how we think about our core tenets. Why is it that we built the product, and what is it that it does? And there are a couple of interesting design tenets here. And all of these design tenets, these 5 things that I'll call out specifically, underpin how we think about everything, our entire design philosophy for how we've built connected search. And as I'll mention in a minute or two, how we're thinking about building all the rest of the products that we will have coming up as well. And which is that there's one single variable that we're trying to optimize for here. We can do lots and lots of things well, but if we do one thing exceptionally well, then what might that be? Because as product builders and engineers, like that's an objective, quantifiable thing that we can all kind of hang our hats on, and that's really relevance, right? So relevance is the North Star for any search engine. People want to be able to find answers to the things that they're looking for quickly and painlessly and accurately. So with that as sort of the guiding principle for what we're setting out to achieve, then the design tenets kind of fall out in the following way. The number one is control over relevancy, and this is important for a few major reasons. That as good and sophisticated as we might be at solving things algorithmically and with statistical rigor, that purely stochastic methods have an upper limit to their usefulness. Machines can be wrong sometimes. There may be situations where the opinions and interests and experiences of people overweigh or outweigh those things that that machines can spit out. So, relevancy control is both a set of suggestions that give automated ways to improve relevancy, and manual overrides for those cases where people can say, well, I don't really like what this thing is putting out, and I want to be able to change it. So there are, and we have a basic set of things out there in the product now. These things will get to become more sophisticated over time. So think about it in the following two dimensions, right? It's that one part of it is algorithmic. So as we're getting user input and data and interactions into the system, then all of those things feed the quality of what we put out. And there's a deterministic angle to it as well, explicitly saying this thing matches this other thing, or if it's between 9 and 5 p.m. on Wednesdays, pin this particular document to the top of the result list. So it's both of those. But design tenet number 2 is search experience. And for us, this means, what is it that makes for a delightful end user experience? A search interface is kind of the obvious place to start. For those of you who are true hardcore search developers, maybe you're comfortable just talking about search engine and Solr syntax or Lucene syntax if you're really good. Most normal people don't want to talk about it that way, right? So there's got to be a bunch of other ways in which we can provide information to people in easy to digest, friendly, and delightful ways, and to take into account how they're interacting with it so that we can adjust the results and fine tune and on and on. And so and this also takes form in a couple of different ways. I'll just use a simple 1 or 2 examples to underscore what I mean here. That there have to be kind of preformed opinions about what an interface might look like. There also have to be embeds and other kinds of capabilities that let the developers and operators of a system use the technology in whatever workflow makes the most amount of sense for them. So it's both of these things, an opinion as to what we think might look like, and then a bunch of controls for how you can take that opinion and make it your own. Number 3, this isn't in order, by the way, so I'm just kind of reading left to right. I think, to me, all of these are equally important. Search quality and relevance is very important, but if it's very slow, it's not very important at all. It's actually it's quite useless. So relevancy and speed kind of go hand in hand, but it's both speed of indexing, it's also speed of retrieval. And so while a bunch of the things that most people are going to see naturally are the interaction mechanisms with the search engine, the operations and the scalability and the sustainability of the platform are equally important. So we spend a lot of engineering cycles and R&D effort into making sure that the platform works properly. This thing is kind of multi-tenant from the ground up, and that we can put into place the right set of architectural safeguards as well as engineering first principles to make sure that we're always balancing these two things: that indexing at the right rate, at the right amount for the use case, and then to be able to spit out results at the right rate as well. All while offering a degree of predictability and control to users, so they can say, well, let me kind of adjust the right amount of latency. Maybe in some cases you're willing to deal with low latency queries. They're going to be cheaper to run, for instance, right? And then kind of the last couple of things are that on the platform side is that operational burden is, this is previous to taking on the product gig at LucidWorks. Like I did a bunch of work at AWS building search engines. This is all we worried about, right? Which is how do you make the platform itself easy for the people who are operating it? So things like backup and restore, high availability, things like that, right? So taking in-place upgrades, things like that. So we kind of do all of those things so that the what you might call undifferentiated heavy lifting doesn't become a chore as such. And then last but not least is cost effectiveness. If we can do these other 4 things, but it costs a lot of money, then they're kind of useless. So we have to do all of them roughly at the same time. So these 5 design principles underscore pretty much everything that we're putting together and out in connected search, as Brian's going to show you in a couple of minutes. But they also underpin how we're thinking about everything else in the rest of our roadmap as well. So just a real brief note on our vision and what you might be able to see from us in the next several months is a set of capabilities and features that break out over a number of different products. There is an organizing logic to it, and it follows this pattern that we want to be, because if you remember, one of the things that I said early on was that search can handle multiple use cases, and the value that we want to be able to show to our users is that we are a search engine for non-technical people. We can handle a bunch of different use cases, and we can do so reliably and at high scale with a high degree of quality. And so those use cases for us break into these following ways: that we want to be able to do things both inside the organization and outside the organization. So connected search is a way to search public websites. Eventually, when we take those same capabilities and bolt on access control and data connectors and things like that, then the same platform itself can be repurposed for documents and for employee experiences and things like that, what we might have called enterprise search a number of years ago. So that's those are kind of bookends of a use case for helping people find information. And then another kind of complementing set of use cases is think about it as the customer lifecycle. So on before transaction and after transaction. So we want to help people find things in order to purchase with e-commerce, product discovery, recommendations, things like that. And then customer service and support to be able to find answers to problems and issues that they might have. And so these four things, inside and outside the organization and before and after purchase, represent in rough outlines what our vision for this product is. And we call it connected search, connected service, connected commerce, and connected workplace, because a single organization, more often than not, will have all of these use cases. And we want to make it available for them to have across these 5 design tenets that I mentioned: cost-effective, high scale, with lots of control over relevance, making it easy for people to use, and available at low latencies and at high indexing thresholds. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian, who's going to walk you through what some customer scenarios might look like, and then we can open up for questions as well.
Thanks, Vivek. Hi, everyone. Let me just click on the next slide here. Give some early feedback on demos and POC or pilots and things like that. But a little bit of background first. I'm Brian. I lead the solution engineering team here at Lucidworks. Been here for a little over 4.5 years, but a long time search architect. I was in DECA early engineer in the early 2000s. And Vivek's right. I mean, search is it's not easy in the past. Back in the DECA days, and we do solve hard problems over the past 4 years with Fusion. You can think about indexing data, bringing data in from multiple data sources, hooking up your pipelines, whether it be on the ingestion side or the query side, hooking up machine learning, looking at analytics, and finally the UI, right? So I just want to give you a little bit of background before I get some feedback, because I've been on quite a few demos and pilots, and it's been awesome. So at a high level, early feedback, from a variety of markets, from a first impression, very easy to use, easy to set up. And we're talking to customers and prospects in tech space, media, education, healthcare. It's great. It's great to show, especially with existing customers where they know Fusion, to be able to show what it's like now with connected search. Some really interesting first impressions. And first of all, even in the first demo, we will go through the website and start crawling data through a UI, a dashboard, point and click, drag and drop. So that's a great workflow. So just walking them through the workflow, which is more of an exercise of tagging, really. So think about your site. You may have things like blogs and webinars, news, events, locations, all types of different content on your site already categorized by your CMS. And once you start indexing that and tagging it and auto tagging, you get a really good sense of what the user experience is going to look like in connected search, because you can use all that great metadata now and labeling to create that dynamic user experience, whether it be facets now. I see a lot of search sites that we look at that don't have facets. Be able to color combination results, lead with big labels and tags, or color coded, for example. So, maybe big buttons like when I search for something, here's a blog versus a webinar. You really be able to call that out for the end user. Some early feedback, very easy to use, point and click. The goal is to make it easy to set up while driving like a world-class user experience. But the UI is one thing, right? I just mentioned tagging and having that world-class UI. But if you can't find what you're looking for, that's a problem. That's always been a challenge in search. In the legacy days, Vivek mentioned Solar and Lucene, and they have their TF-IDF principles, and it's more lexical. But there are challenges there. That's why we've, over the past 7 years, have developed these machine learning jobs to do that, to help with reducing friction at the search bar. So your end users, as they're typing, make sure they can find things, hopefully in the number one slot, like as they're typing, even in search ahead, click on it within the search bar and find what they're looking for, to delight your customers, to increase click-through rates and things like that. And I'll talk about metrics here in a bit when we've been talking through these demos and with our customers. But to do that, right, to increase that click-through rate, to get to the number one spot in the search result, it does take machine learning, right? And luckily we've been here doing it for over 7 years with machine learning, and to make this more plug and play. So we have experience but it's not about running all the machine learning jobs, hooking it up to the UI. It's prescriptive. It's plug and play. This is a different market. The goal is to enable it out of the box. So that's going to really reduce times for implementation, complexity, and just delight those business admins that Vivek was talking about. But we also found out that, we've been in search for a long time. Business users also want control. So rather than having search just take over 100%, they do want control. So even with the best machine learning business users, they want that experience to control, for example, to be able to pin some documents, pin, boost, bury. And that's where Experience Optimizer comes in. This is a solution we've had for a while. So business admins can review relevancy, curate the user experience, and have ultimate control in a drag and drop manner. They don't have to go to IT. So, you can think about, for example, let's say iPhone 14 comes out, and the marketing team or business team, web team knows it's coming out. They want to be able to pin certain products or documents about that. And so they have that ability to, all right, machine learning is going to take control of the relevancy, but be able to control that. Absolutely. So just make sure the users are finding exactly what they're looking for. So good thing we've been doing this for a long time. Now we're just enabling it in this new app called Connected Search. A couple other things with feedback I've noticed. I'm surprised that, a little surprised, but a lot of sites have multiple search engines still on their site for site search. They might have a search box for global search and then another search engine for providers or events, locations, and things like that. And it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge for the business team, the web team, because to consolidate it all, it would be a project, right? It would be a project to get all the folks in IT and bring it together. So that's another early feedback. Like, wow, okay, as a business user, I can point to all these areas of my site, including locations, events, and things like that, and just have it all within one platform. Another thing I think I've mentioned, there's still some burden on the admins when we're looking at different sites and different search technologies that they're using today. I'm surprised about the level of manual taxonomies that they're having to manage today. So, for example, they might have to tag every single document or create a high-level list of taxonomy levels. So when people search, first they have to go through this taxonomy and then find the results. So the feedback I've heard from showing Connected Search to a couple of folks like that is that it comes out of the box. There's no need to really manage that manual taxonomy over time. And I think lastly, on the analytics, very key. So just understanding how well searches are going. Here at LucidWorks, we're a very data-driven company. We're always looking at metrics, not just for our customers, but internally as well. And so just having to monitor those positive business outcomes. And that's the great thing about analytics, that it does drive, we're essentially capturing all that user behavior, what people are searching on, what they click on, what they facet, what they eventually click on. And so we're collecting these click-through rates, and we're pushing out to the business user. They love that. There's also some really technical things we're not pushing out. They don't have to worry about. There might be some technical engineers on this call, but things like MRR, mean relevancy rank, which we're tracking. When someone searches on, what is the position of the document do the user eventually clicks on? Is it the number 1 spot, number 5, number 10? We want to monitor that internally to make sure that machine learning is pushing those relevant documents to the top. So again, the goal is to push that document to the top so users are finding what they're looking for as quickly as possible. And so luckily we've been working on that for a long time. Again, we've long time leader in machine learning-based search for well over 7 years. And so, but again, with connected search, you're not having to worry about the machine learning jobs and picking the which ones and linking it to the query pipelines and then the UI. It comes with the whole application, which is fantastic. So I think that's the number one, also thing, just the feedback I'm hearing from these customers and prospects, that it just comes as a solution, as an app. So yeah, I think in summary, delighted. My team's delighted to show you a demo. And what you'll see, we'll be able to crawl your site. You'll be able to play with the Experience Optimizer and show the relevancy, how it works, and also embedded analytics. So tracking the click-through rates and how people are using the site as well. I think there's some, just on the screen here, we have some early adopter customer quotes here. So I've heard all these, in real time. This is awesome. They can set up on the left-hand side, easily set up and manage the site search experience. I already mentioned this, but I was really surprised at how we could solve the problem if you have multiple search technologies and overcome that also other challenge where we have to bring IT in to consolidate all those search technologies, where we've been able to show it here probably in the first demo or two. And the tagging of connected search is very flexible. It allows you to do a lot of things on the UI to provide that world-class user experience. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over back to Jenny. I'll just click the next slide, please, Jenny. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks so much, Brian. This is all so promising. If those initial insights are any indication, the future is bright for search. So now, as you've all been listening through this, I'm sure it's raised some good burning questions in your mind. Let's see what some of those queries from the audience are. Vivek and Brian, I might need you to back me up here on a couple of these. I don't want to misspeak, so I'll punt it over to the experts. But before we begin the Q&A, please direct your attention to our webinar survey. It's available on the right of the presentation window. If you close the survey, you can reopen the widget by clicking the icon along the bottom of your screen. So thanks in advance for filling out that feedback form. It really helps us to sort of better serve you and create content that's really going to excite you in the future. As a reminder, to participate in the Q&A, just type your questions into the text box located to the right of the presentation window, or click the Q&A icon, again, at the bottom of the screen. If we're not able to answer all of the questions that you guys submit, we'll be sure to follow up with you guys after the fact directly. I will personally force Brian and Vivek to reach out to you. So without further ado, let me jump into our questions. So we have one of our audience members says, how does it work for the initial implementation? Is it done by LucidWorks, a partner, or the customer? Brian, do you want to speak a little bit about some of our early feedback that we've gotten?
Sure, I can do that. I mean, typically it's more about onboarding and enablement than implementation. I mean, this is I'd love to show you a demo, whoever asked that question, but there's not a lot of professional services or partner implementation about this. It's more about onboarding in a couple of hours and kicking it off, do some training, and really going over the taxonomy of your current site, like what do you want to tag and label so that you can eventually push that to the UI. Like I mentioned, color code the search results, facets on the left, and things like that. So it's, it can be done by the customer, but we recommend a very quick onboarding session to kick it off. It could be 2 to 3 hours, for example, to go through that kind of going over your site and recommendation and training, and then turn over the keys. And of course, there are other options too. There's options for ongoing success as well. So, but we do recommend that first onboarding session.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And I think, it depends on the needs of the customer too. If there's, I think there's options, but yeah, Brian, I appreciate that. That onboarding session has been super valuable for our early access customers. So another question from the group, you mentioned that this was built for the business user. Does this mean this is something, say, my marketing team could use without too much help from IT or development? Vivek, do you want to maybe take that one?
Sure. Yes, 100%. That is precisely why we designed it the way that we have, and how the features will grow over the subsequent months. The intention has been to let people who have important business needs but may not have the technical foundation or perhaps the time to wrangle all the internals for getting a search engine up and going. So marketing is a great example of that. As I said, the first connected search is a capability for indexing and searching public websites. More frequently than not, that's a marketing owned initiative. So it's an obvious place to start.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Vivek. A question, we're getting some good questions from the audience, so thank you so much for your participation, guys. Another question, do you offer a service that performs global federated search? Is that part of connected search? And I raise this because I believe we have talked about this a little bit internally. Vivek, I punt this one over to you as well.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different answers to that. So there's you can point this thing at a website and index content from it and crawl a public website with HTML content pretty easily. As the features start to evolve, we'll also provide a number of different mechanisms to index content from various kinds of repositories. Right? There could be content management, it could be a database, it could be other kinds of stuff. So federating across multiple websites or multiple repositories is a native capability now. You can do it with some degree of some degree of extensibility and ease right now. All of that will become better and more capable over time. So oftentimes when we're talking about federating, particularly for a public website or for search engines for public consumption, it means you might have some documents in a domain that's serving up stuff for support, and you might have another domain that's serving up stuff for marketing, and you might want a search engine that can index content across both of those things and have a common interface for that. Like, you should be able to do that now.
Great, I love that. Thanks, Vivek. Yeah, these are wonderful questions. So another question, and Brian, I'll punt this one over to you. How do you customize the search results presentation to match the website? And I know this is also something we've come across recently, Brian, with some of our early access customers. Is it CSS, JavaScript, or part of the customization parameters?
It is parameterized. And so, we do bring back the response in JSON. It has all those great tags and labels that you created on the back end. And then, if you wanted to, for example, put, hook into your search box on the top, fastest on the left, and color code the results in the middle, you do have all those tags available. And so, we essentially have the high-level tag so that you can embed it right within your UI.
Great. Yep. One last question, and there was quite a few from the audience. We have several questions about pricing, and I'll speak to that in a second. We had some e-commerce questions, and we'll reach out directly for those. And then a couple questions about multiple languages. That's a roadmap item, and we will reach out directly to speak to you about that. But the last question we'll ask is, what is the target size of pages to index? Brian, I'll punt that one over to you.
Yeah, I would probably ask a clarifying question on that one. But we haven't run into an upper end or a lower end. So yeah, I mean, so we've been doing this for a long time, but you know, we crawl, in our experience, we crawl big data pages and small data pages, and using our machine learning to produce that high relevancy. But there's no upper end, for example, if that's what they're asking.
Yeah, like, you know, look, you can't go and shove a petabyte into it, so that's not going to happen. But and not to be too facetious about it, but I'm just kind of underscoring what Brian's saying, that I don't think there really should be like a practical limit for most public website searches. You know, we're talking about a couple million documents or something like that, maybe a bit more. I don't think we won't have any problem with that.
Right. Yeah, for this site search use case, I mean, we do have enterprise search customers that are indexing 5 gigabyte, for example, an oil and gas seismic file. But that's not this use case. This is, you know, website pages are, you know, usually do have an upper end, and we're not going to hit that limit.
Yeah, fair enough. We have a ton of great questions coming in, and unfortunately not as much time as we would like. We have one more good one come in that I thought was great, and then we'll close, and then we'll address all of these one-to-one with folks. So if you do have questions, please type them in, and we'll respond to you guys after the fact over email, and appreciate all of the engagement thus far. This is wonderful. So one last question, does Lucidworks support a Google-like experience in that one could search by phrases or questions and get results back? So Vivek or Brian, I think this is a great one.
Yeah, maybe both, right? So this is on surface a really simple question. It's phrased really well, so I mean, I credit the questioner for asking that. But answering it is a bit difficult because, again, like, search is subjective, right? So what is the right answer in a Google-like experience depends on who's asking the question. So yeah, we do support phrase queries. We have a number of capabilities that we've built over time for sort of question and answer type experiences. A number of those are available in our flagship product, Fusion. We will make those kinds of capabilities available in this product over time. This is a new thing, so you know it's going to evolve pretty quickly. But yeah, so there's kind of a range of potentially acceptable responses to this thing, right? So if you put in a phrase, you'll probably get a good result back. If you want to have a conversation with it, it's probably not there yet, but it might be in sometime in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said about it being like it's subjective. So it really depends on how you want the results to be surfaced on your personal website. Like the way Google surfaces results is what we're kind of accustomed to, but we might have some brand elements and language that comes into play. I know we have pin boosting, bearing, and blocking, and you mentioned that, Vivek, that's on the very near-term roadmap, you know, and that changes the experience itself. But I think giving people control of their search back a little bit, I think is what makes something like this so special. So yeah, I just really loved that question. Google-like experiences, because that's what we expect in search, right? It's what we know. So okay, with that, like I said, again, there's still a ton of great questions coming in, but for sake of time, I want to just say thank you. We will respond to literally every single person that submits something one-to-one. I hope you learned as much as I did about how to deliver superior search results with connected search. This webinar is, by the way, one of many. We're going to be digging deeper into the product in the coming weeks, and we're going to be delivering actionable thought leadership and content that's really going to help you get your search together this year. We'll also be talking to externally a little bit about the differences between, say, Fusion, our enterprise legacy product that we talked about before, and connected search. And there's a lot to talk on that. But for now, if you want more information, either drop a question in the chat and we'll respond to you direct, or please visit our website at lucidworks.com/products/connected-search. lucidworks.com/connected-search. There it is on the screen. We'll also send some links so you can join our early access program if you want to get started right away. And within the next 24 hours, you will receive a personalized follow-up email with details and a link to today's presentation on demand. Share it with colleagues. You guys know the drill. We will talk soon. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. Vivek, Brian, thank you so much for your time and your intelligent responses and thoughtful presentation. And with that, we'll close it, and we will be talking soon. Thanks again.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.